My fiancé slapped the confession letter onto my face, forcing me to take the blame for his adopted daughter. It's just a few years in prison, you're inherently lowly anyway. Behind him, my parents acquiesced, and the adopted daughter smirked. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and gripped the chopsticks tightly. When her right eye was ruined, I laughed out loud. Later, with the Jiang family smuggling ledger in my hands, my parents imprisoned for illegally possessing firearms, and him lying in the ICU begging me, let me go. I touched the organ donation consent form he signed for the deceased's daughter and softly said, debts must be repaid with life. Adrian slapped the confession letter in front of me. Sign it. His fingertips tapped lightly on the paper, and the eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses held no warmth. Clara hit someone, why should I sign for that? My hand gripping the glass turned pale, nails almost digging into my palm. Did they really think I was still the pushover from 3 years ago? Just because your life was sustained by the Jiang family. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his tone casual. It's just a few years in prison, I'll still marry you when you get out. But Clara can't have a criminal record, she needs to marry into the Liu family. I laughed out loud, spinning the cup half a turn in my hand. 3 years ago, when the Ruan family went bankrupt, my parents pushed me to the Jiang family to offset the debt. Adrian said he would marry me, but then he adopted Clara. For these 3 years, I've lived like a shadow in the Jiang family, worse off than a servant. I won't sign. I slammed the cup on the table, splashing water onto the edge of the confession letter. Maya, don't be ungrateful. Adrian stood up abruptly, revealing half a tattoo in the wrinkles of his suit. It was a mark from his days in the underground fighting ring. I knew long ago he wasn't some refined gentleman. Dad, Mom, do you also think I should sign? I looked at my parents by the dining table. Harold avoided my gaze, and Linda twisted her apron. Maya, Clara is still young. She's the young miss of the Jiang family, you're different. So blood ties could be this cold and thin. It seemed we couldn't reach an agreement. Adrian took out his phone and made a call. 3 minutes later, 3 men in black t-shirts entered. Their muscles bulged under the clothes, gold chains hanging from their necks. Take her to the basement, let her out when she comes to her senses. Adrian adjusted his cuffs as if discussing something trivial. When the bodyguards reached to grab me, I sidestepped. My right hand felt the fruit knife under the table, which I had hidden while peeling an apple earlier. Don't touch me. I pressed the blade against my own wrist, staring at Adrian. If you touch me, this confession will never be signed. Adrian's face darkened. Maya, do you dare to die? See if I dare. I pressed harder on my wrist, blood beads seeping out and dripping along the blade. The 3 bodyguards froze, clearly not expecting this move. Big sister, don't be impulsive. Clara suddenly emerged from behind Adrian, her eyes red-rimmed. It's my fault, I shouldn't have driven. But I really can't go to prison, the Liu family will look down on me. She grabbed my arm, her nails almost digging into my flesh. Her pitiful appearance was worlds apart from her usual demeanor when snatching my things. Get away. I shook off her hand, pressing the blade deeper. Big sister. Clara staggered from my push, tears falling more fiercely. I know you hate me, but we're sisters. Please pity me, okay? Sisters? I laughed out loud, blood flowing down my wrist into my sleeve. When you stole my skirt, why didn't you think we were sisters? When you badmouthed me in front of Adrian, why didn't you think of it? Clara's face paled, and she hid back behind Adrian. Maya, don't quibble with a child. Linda finally spoke, her tone reproachful. She's still young, as the older sister, you should bear with her. Bear with her? I looked at my wrist, blood had soaked half my sleeve. Bear with her to the point of going to prison for her? Dad, do you also think I should bear it? Harold slammed the table. Are you trying to force us to death? If the Jiang family withdraws support, what about your brother? Again, the brother. Always the brother. I suddenly laughed, my shoulders shaking. Fine, I'll sign. I threw the knife to the ground with a clang. Adrian's expression softened. Wouldn't it have been better if you'd done this earlier? He handed me the pen, his eyes full of condescending triumph. I picked up the pen but didn't write on the paper. Instead, I walked step by step toward Clara. You said earlier you'd remember my kindness forever? Clara was stunned for a moment, then nodded vigorously. Yes. Then you must remember it well. I suddenly reached out, pinching her chin. Before she could scream, I grabbed the chopsticks from the table. Ah! A piercing scream shattered the living room. The chopsticks precisely pierced Clara's right eye. Blood trickled down her cheek, staining her white dress red. She clutched her eye, rolling on the ground, her body curled into a ball. My eye. My eye. Dad. Save me. It hurts so much. Adrian's face instantly turned ashen. Maya, you're insane. He wanted to help Clara but dared not touch the chopstick lodged in her eye socket. I picked up the knife from the ground and leisurely wiped off the blood. Insane? I'm just making her remember how to repay what she owes me. Linda collapsed in her chair in fright, pointing at me but unable to speak. Harold shouted in a trembling voice, Murder. This is murder. What's the rush? I walked up to him, pressing the knife against his neck. This is just the beginning. Adrian suddenly reacted, grabbing a chair and smashing it toward me. I dodged sideways, slamming the knife handle hard into his knee. A crisp crack sounded, accompanied by Adrian's cry of pain. He clutched his knee and knelt on the ground, sweat beading on his forehead. You. Do you know who I am? The Jiang family won't let you go. I squatted down, pinching his chin just as I had Clara's. From the moment you forced me to sign the confession, the Jiang family was doomed. Sirens sounded outside the door. Probably neighbors heard the screams and called the police. I stuffed the confession letter into Adrian's arms. Hold on to it well, it might come in handy. When the police burst in, I was sitting on the sofa, toying with the fruit knife. On the ground were the screaming Clara, the wailing Adrian, and my terrified parents. Officer, I raised my wrist, revealing the still bleeding wound. I surrender. They forced me to take the blame for someone else and tried to kill me to silence me. Adrian struggled and roared, Nonsense. She's insane. She stabbed Clara. I smiled at him. The smile must have been gentle, just like the ones I gave him over the past 3 years whenever he ordered me around. Evidence? You say I hurt her, who saw it? The living room surveillance had been tampered with by me 3 days ago. Those so-called bodyguards were just desperados Adrian hired from the black market. Would the police believe their testimonies? Clara was still wailing, her voice hoarse. I looked at the growing pool of blood and suddenly felt calm. Those eyes had provocatively stared at me countless times, saying whatever I wore looked like rags, that Adrian loved her, not me. Now, it was ruined, just like my life destroyed over these 3 years. It was time to reclaim what was owed. As the police lifted me up, I glanced back. Adrian was glaring at me viciously, eyes blazing with fire. Linda was frantically trying to stop Clara's bleeding. Harold lay on the ground, ashen-faced. How nice. Everything was in chaos. The police car sped away from the villa area with sirens blaring. I leaned against the window, watching the streetlights flash by. The wound on my wrist still hurt, but compared to the pain in my heart, what was it? Adrian, Clara, and my dear parents. Wait for me. This game has just begun. The interrogation room lights were dazzling. Adrian's lawyer slapped the injury report on the table. My client has a cracked kneecap, constituting minor injury. Miss Maya, intentional harm is no joke. I stared at the report, my fingertips curling under the table. I should have anticipated this when I bribed the bodyguards 3 days ago. Mr. Lawyer. I raised my head, forcing a smile. Do you know the true identities of those 3 bodyguards? The lawyer's pen paused. Irrelevant to this case. How could it be irrelevant? I pulled out a crumpled note from my pocket. On it were 3 names written in lipstick. Fugitives from the black market fighting ring, who stabbed someone last month. What does it mean that Adrian hired them with money? The lawyer's face changed. A chair fell outside the interrogation room. It must be Adrian overhearing. You're slandering. He burst through the door, his knee still in a cast. Those people were temporary hires, how would I know their backgrounds? Oh? I tilted my head to look at him. Then what about this transfer record? I nodded toward the police. I already handed over the backup during yesterday's statement. Adrian's face instantly turned liver red. That's their labor fee. Does a labor fee need to go through an underground bank? I took out a second note with a string of account numbers. This account holder was the main culprit in last year's money laundering case. The police officer suddenly coughed. Mr. Adrian, you need to explain these clearly. The lawyer quickly blocked in front of Adrian. These are all Miss Maya's one-sided claims. My client has an alibi. Is that so? I slid a mini recorder from my sleeve. I picked this up in the hallway earlier, Clara dropped it. Pressing play, Clara's shrill voice pierced out, Dad. I saw you stuffing money to those 3. Telling them to break Maya's arm. The recording stopped abruptly. The lawyer's mouth twitched. This is forged. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. Need to apply for voice print identification? Adrian suddenly slumped in the chair. He probably forgot that Clara's little tricks were all learned from him. When the police took the recorder, I added, on the day Clara caused the accident, she drove Adrian's car. The dashcam shouldn't be completely deleted, right? The lawyer's face turned completely ashen. I watched his trembling hands packing files. How nice, panic is contagious. Maya, you're ruthless enough. Adrian suddenly laughed, a laugh uglier than crying. You think you can escape like this? The Jiang family won't let you off easy. I'm waiting. I stood up, blood seeping through the gauze on my wrist again. By the way, I turned back to him. Remember to supplement calcium for your knee injury. Lest you can't stand up later. Walking out of the interrogation room, I bumped into Linda. She lunged to hit me but was stopped by the police. You ungrateful wretch. Are you going to ruin our whole family? If Clara's eye is blinded, I won't forgive you. I brushed off her hand, my voice soft. 3 years ago, when you pushed me to the Jiang family, why didn't you think there'd be today? She was stunned, then started wailing. We had no choice. Your brother needs to go to school, the family needs to eat. So I should just die? I stared at the white hair at her temples, earned from slaving for the Jiang family these 3 years. Maya, just think of it as accumulating virtue. Accumulating virtue? I laughed out loud. When you let Clara steal my university admission notice, why didn't you talk about accumulating virtue? Linda's face instantly paled. She thought I'd never know about that. As the police pulled her away, I heard her say to Harold, quick, find the old madam for a solution. The old madam, Adrian's grandmother, reputed for her ruthless methods. Interesting. The detention room bed was hard and uncomfortable. I felt out the SIM card hidden in my shoe sole, the one for the black market boss. Dialing, a rough laugh came from the other end. Miss Maya, got the stuff. The Jiang family smuggled cars list and their tax evasion ledger. Placed where you said. I glanced at the corner surveillance. Money will be transferred to your account. Straightforward. The other party hung up. 3 years ago in the Jiang family basement, while organizing old items for Adrian, I found his photo with the smuggling gang. I knew then it was a good blade to wield. At 3 a.m., someone knocked on the detention room door. It was an old lady in a cheapao, eyes like a hawk. Maya? She sat on the small stool opposite me. I'm Adrian's grandmother, Evelyn. Something? I didn't get up, continuing to pick at the dirt in my nails. It was blood from stabbing Clara. Hand over what you have. She pushed over a check. 5 million, enough for your lifetime comfort. I picked up the check, examined it against the light, then tore it to shreds. Old Madam Evelyn, when your grandson forced me to take the blame, why didn't he think to leave me a way out? Her gaze turned cold. Little girl, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Crushing you is child's play for the Jiang family. Is that so? I felt out a USB drive from under the pillow. This has the Jiang family's tax evasion records for the past decade. And videos of your son keeping mistresses. Evelyn's fingers clenched her cheapao buttons. Where did you get this? Guess? I stuffed the USB into my mouth, biting it behind my teeth. Either let me out, or we perish together. She stared at me for a full half-minute, then suddenly laughed. You've got guts. Like me when I was young. Unfortunately, I spat out the USB and crushed it under my shoe sole. I'm more ruthless than you. Her face completely darkened. What do you want? Let me out. I held up 3 fingers. Within 3 days, I want to see 3 things. First, Clara surrenders at the police station. Second, Adrian publicly apologizes to me. Third, I paused. Harold and Linda leave with nothing. Evelyn stood up abruptly. Don't go too far. Too far? I laughed, tilting my head back. Compared to what you've done to me, this is nothing. As she slammed the door leaving, I heard her tell the bodyguard, find out what she's been doing these 3 years. I lay back on the hard bed, staring at the ceiling. On the night I was locked in the basement 3 years ago, I knew tears wouldn't bring pity. Only by sharpening the knife fast enough could I scrape back what these people owed me, bit by bit. Morning sunlight filtered through the iron bars. The police opened the door, expression complex. Miss Maya, you can go. The Jiang family, they've withdrawn the case. I walked out of the police station. Adrian's car was parked by the roadside. He sat in a wheelchair, face grim. Maya, you've won the first step. But the game isn't over. I ignored him and headed straight to the bus stop. My phone vibrated suddenly, a stranger's number. Opening it, a video, Clara tied to a chair, mouth gagged. The sender said, if you want her to live, bring 5 million to the dock. I deleted the video, a cold smile curling my lips. Evelyn was jumping out more eagerly than I thought. I hailed a taxi. To the dock. The driver looked back. Miss, that place is chaotic. It's fine. I felt the folding knife hidden in my sleeve. I'm going to send someone on their way. Chain sounds came from behind the warehouse iron door. Evelyn sat in a rattan chair, fingering prayer beads. 10 minutes earlier than I expected. Seems Miss Maya is eager to die. I kicked open the half-closed door, spinning the folding knife in my palm. Where's Clara? The sack on the ground moved, emitting whimpers. Don't rush. She lifted her chin. 2 bodyguards blocked the exit. Look at this first. The projector suddenly lit up, showing Harold's face. He was tied to a chair, blood trickling from his mouth. Maya. Save Dad. Old Madam Evelyn said. As long as you confess. Linda's cries mixed in. Maya, be good. Or your dad will. I stared at my father's swollen, bun-like face on the screen. 3 years ago, he was like this too, kneeling and begging me to go to the Jiang family in exchange for my brother's tuition. Confess what? I kicked away a beer bottle at my feet. Confess that I didn't take the blame for Clara? Evelyn laughed, twirling the prayer beads faster. Quite perceptive. Sign this confession for attempted murder, and your parents and Clara can all live. The confession was thrown at my feet, ink still wet. It stated I attempted murder out of jealousy toward Clara, stabbing her right eye. Do you think I'll sign? I squatted, fingertips tracing the paper. Old Madam Evelyn, at your age, still haven't learned empathy? Her gaze was ice cold. Chop off her hand and show it to Harold. As the bodyguard's knife was drawn, a net suddenly fell from the warehouse ceiling. Black cloth covered their heads, muffled sounds mixed with bone cracks. Forgot to tell you, I stood up, dusting my hands. The black market people prefer working with me. Struggles came from the net. It was people arranged by the black market boss at my request. After all, Evelyn owed them 3 times more than my reward. Evelyn stood abruptly, her prayer beads snapping. You knew it was a trap all along? Otherwise? I untied the sack on the ground. Clara's right eye was bandaged, left eye rolling back like a dead fish. Big sister. Save me. Her voice was hoarse like sandpaper. Grandma said as long as you sign. Sign to exonerate you? I pinched her uninjured eye. Just like when you stole my notice, and she said she'd find me a better school? Clara's body shook like chaff. I was wrong. Really wrong. Please let me go this time. Too late. I stuffed the confession into her mouth. Either swallow it, or let your other eye taste the chopsticks too. She shook her head desperately, tears mixed with blood streaming down. Evelyn suddenly lunged, nails aiming for my face. Dare you touch her? I dodged sideways, smashing the knife back into her nape. The old lady staggered and fell, silver hair scattering on the ground. The Jiang family smuggled cars list, I've already sent to the Anti-Smuggling Bureau. I kicked her leg. Do you think they'll incidentally check your son's mistresses? Evelyn's face instantly turned defeated gray. What do you really want? Didn't I say? I took out my phone, opening the recording. Clara surrenders, Adrian apologizes, my parents leave penniless. The recording was Evelyn's earlier words, even if we kill Maya, we must protect Clara. Now adding this, hiring murder. Enough for you to rot in prison till death. I pocketed the phone. Sirens suddenly sounded outside the warehouse. Evelyn's face completely collapsed. You called the police? Otherwise stay for tea? I grabbed Clara's hair, dragging her to the warehouse door. Officer, I pointed to the confession on the ground. Someone forced me to take the blame and tried to kill me to silence me. Clara suddenly screamed and lunged, the wound under the bandage splitting, blood splashing my face. I'll kill you, you bitch. I sidestepped, she crashed headfirst into the iron door. After a muffled thud, she slid down softly. The right eye bandage was thoroughly red, like a rotten flower. As Evelyn was escorted away by police, she stared deadly at me. I won't let you go. The Jiang family won't let you go. Fine. I licked the blood on my face. I'm waiting. When the ambulance took Clara, the doctor shook his head. The right eye can't be saved, the impact caused intracranial bleeding. I stood outside the cordon, watching the taillights vanish into the night. This was just the beginning. My phone vibrated, a stranger's number. Miss Maya, Adrian had his other leg broken in the hospital. Said it was your order, for symmetry. The black market boss's laugh was grating. Well done. I hung up. Adrian liked symmetry, 3 years ago when he broke my left hand, that's what he said. Leaving the police station after giving my statement, dawn had broken. Harold and Linda squatted by the roadside, seeing me, they pounced. Maya. You have to save us. The Jiang family won't let us go. I shook off their hands. Didn't you want to get rid of me long ago? Now your wish is granted. Harold suddenly knelt before me. Dad was wrong. Really wrong. Please, for your brother's sake. Brother? I laughed. The brother who used my admission notice to get his school spot. Does he know every pair of shoes he wears was bought with his sister's life? Linda covered her face crying. We did it for your good. The Jiang family is wealthy, marrying in. Marry in to be a scapegoat? I squatted, looking at them. After leaving penniless, you can scavenge garbage to survive. Just like what you made me do 3 years ago. Their cries stopped abruptly. Probably didn't expect me to be this ruthless. As I turned to leave, I heard Linda scream, Maya. You'll get retribution. Retribution? I touched the scar on my wrist. My retribution came long ago. The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant. Adrian lay on the bed, both legs in casts. Seeing me enter, his eyes were poisoned. It was you. Not a question, an affirmation. So what if it was? I sat on the chair by the bed. How does it feel? Both legs immobile, isn't it more fair than when I had one hand broken? He tried to lunge but fell to the ground. I'll kill you. Kill me? I took out my phone, opening photos of Adrian and his mistress. If Evelyn sees these, do you think she'll still acknowledge you as grandson? Adrian's face instantly paled. What do you really want? Simple. I threw a document at him. Sign this, split the Jiang family assets half with me. He stared at the document, suddenly laughing. You're crazy? How could the Jiang family's assets possibly? How not? I took out another document. Evidence of your father's smuggling, your grandma's murder-for-hire recording, and your tax evasion records. Together, enough to bury the Jiang family in prison. Adrian's hand shook badly. When did you start collecting? From the day you locked me in the basement. I stood up, looking down at him on the ground. 3 years were enough for me to strip your Jiang family bare from head to toe. He suddenly crawled like a dog, grabbing my pant leg. I'll sign. I'll sign. Please let me go. Wouldn't it have been better earlier? I kicked away his hand. Before tomorrow afternoon, transfer the money to my account. Otherwise, these files will appear at the prosecutor's office. At the ward door, I glanced back. Adrian lay limp on the ground like a pile of mud. How nice. This is where they belong. The phone rang again. It was the hospital nurse. Are you Clara's family? The patient's condition has worsened, needs family to sign for treatment abandonment. I gripped the phone, listening to the busy tone. Sunlight through the window cast mottled shadows on the ground. Clara's life was finally soiled too, just like what she did to me back then. The bank manager's voice was like sandpaper on glass. Miss Maya, Adrian's account is empty. All funds transferred out at 8 p.m. last night. I gripped the phone and walked to the window. Plain tree leaves covered the ground below. Transferred where? Overseas anonymous account, can't trace the owner. As expected. Someone like Adrian wouldn't obediently split assets with me. Do me a favor. I felt the black card in my wallet. Freeze all Jiang Group associated accounts, say received money laundering report. The manager's breath paused. This doesn't follow rules. Rules? I laughed. How much of the Jiang family's money do you think is clean? Keyboard sounds came from the other end. Reply in half an hour. Better be quick. I hung up, fingers tapping rhythm on the windowsill. 3 years ago in the Jiang family study, while organizing files for Adrian, I saw his photo with the Swiss bank manager. I memorized that man's face then. The doorbell rang, it was Harold and Linda. Wrapped in scavenged ragged coats, noses red from cold. Maya, we know we were wrong. Linda knelt on the ground, grabbing my pant leg. Please give us some money. Your brother needs tuition. I kicked away her hand, heel grinding over her fingers. Does it hurt? 3 years ago when I knelt before you, begging not to be sent to the Jiang family, why didn't you feel the pain? Her face instantly twisted. You heartless thing. We raised you for nothing. Harold suddenly lunged to grab the bag, I dodged sideways. He fell to the ground, unable to get up for a while. There's 5,000 in the bag. I threw the wallet at him. Take the money and scram. They exchanged glances, pouncing like hungry wolves on fat meat. Amid the bill-counting sounds, Linda suddenly looked up. Did you get rich? Did the Jiang family give you money? I stared at her greedy eyes. So what if yes? It's my money, none of your business. We're your parents. Harold stuffed the money into his bosom. Your money is our money. At least half. I suddenly laughed out loud, bending to pinch his chin. Half? Do you deserve it? When you sold me to the Jiang family, you only got 200,000. His face turned liver red. That was a loan. Not selling. Loan? I took out my phone, playing the recording. Inside was his voice from 3 years ago. As long as the Jiang family gives money, I don't want this daughter. The recording stopped. Their faces turned completely white. Scram now, I put away the phone. You can still keep this 5,000. Otherwise, not even that. They scrambled away in panic, curses echoing in the hallway. I closed the door, leaning against it. How nice, even the last fig leaf of family affection was torn off by themselves. The bank manager called. Miss Maya, done. All Jiang Group accounts frozen. Adrian just caused a scene at the bank and was detained by security. Well done. I hung up, changed clothes, and went to the hospital. Adrian was tied to the bed, mouth gagged. Seeing me enter, his eyes bulged like bells. I pulled out the gag, disinfectant mixed with bad breath assaulted me. Maya. Let me out. Or I'll make you pay. Make me pay? I sat by the bed peeling an apple. Like how you made me pay? 3 years ago locking me in the basement, letting those bodyguards. His face instantly paled. You remember all? How could I forget? I threw the apple core at his face. Those days, every day I thought about how to make you repay double. He suddenly struggled violently, ripping the 4-tube, blood splashing the white sheet. I was wrong. Really wrong. I'll give the money. Right away. Please let me go. Too late. I took out another document. This is the Jiang Group Equity Transfer Agreement. Sign it, and I might consider letting you off. He stared at the document, suddenly laughing madly. Dream on. The Jiang family's industry can't go to you, you bitch. Is that so? I opened a video on my phone. Inside was Adrian's father being taken by police. Your father's smuggling evidence is solid, at least 20 years. Your grandma's murder for hire could be death penalty. Do you think the Jiang family can be saved? His laughter stopped abruptly, tears mixed with snot streaming down. Sign or not? I shoved the pen into his hand. 3 seconds. 3. 2. The pen tip scratched the paper like a dying whale. Good. I put away the document. Now, let's talk about Clara. He lifted his head sharply, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Clara. Can she still be saved? Whether she can be saved is up to me. I took out the consent form from the nurse. The abandonment of treatment signature was still blank. His lips trembled. What do you want? Simple. I placed the pen before him. Sign it, and I'll tell you the fund's whereabouts. He stared at the consent, then at me, suddenly grabbing the pen. As ink spread on the paper, I heard him say, she wasn't a Jiang family member anyway. Better if she dies. I put away the consent and turned to leave. Wait. He shouted behind. The funds? You haven't told me. I glanced back, smiling gently. I lied. His screams echoed in the corridor, just like mine 3 years ago when locked in the basement by him. Outside Clara's ward, nurses were gossiping. That girl is so pitiful, eye blinded, brain damaged too. Heard her parents don't care. I pushed open the door. Clara lay on the bed, left eye staring blankly at the ceiling. Dark red blood seeped under the bandage. Hearing noise, she slowly turned her head. It's you? Her voice like a rusty hinge. It's me. I sat by the bed. How do you feel? She suddenly laughed, eerily. My eye. Isn't it pretty? Like that doll you lost? I was stunned. 3 years ago I had a ceramic doll, she smashed its right eye. You remember. Of course. She suddenly grabbed my hand, nails digging into flesh. I just want to snatch your things. Your doll, your clothes, your man. And your life. I pried open her hand and backhanded her a slap. In the crisp sound, she quieted. Why? Why don't you follow the script? You should be like before, letting me bully you. Because the script changed long ago. I stood up. From the day you stole my notice. She suddenly coughed violently, black blood surging from her mouth. I'm unwilling. Really unwilling. I watched her expire, like watching a rotten flower. Phone vibrated, the black market boss. Miss Maya, Harold and Linda gambled in the black market, oh $1 million. They say. You'll pay for them. I gripped the phone, walking to the window. The plane tree leaves below fell denser. Tell them, if they want money, go to the Jiang old residence. There. Has what they want. The boss's laugh was ambiguous. Understood. I hung up, looking at Clara's gradually cold face. How nice, another debt repaid. Footsteps in the corridor, the police. Miss Maya, Evelyn committed suicide in prison. Left a letter for you. The paper had one line, I'll wait for you in hell. I laughed, throwing the paper in the trash. Hell? I've been living there long ago. Phone rang again, a stranger's number. Is this Maya? I'm Adrian's lawyer. He wants to make a deal with you. What deal? I walked to the window. He says he knows who the accident victim's family is from that year. And knows. The deceased had fatal evidence against the Jiang family. My heart jumped. Evidence? There's more I don't know? The photo from the lawyer smelled of ink. In the black and white image, the deceased held a little girl. He's Michael, was Jiang Group accountant before death. I pinched the photo's edge, fingertips tight. Accountant? Indeed, more to the Jiang accounts I don't know. Adrian says, the lawyer pushed his glasses. Michael had an encrypted ledger recording the Jiang family's murder case from 20 years ago. Murder case? My fingertip traced the man's face in the photo. 3 years ago, organizing Jiang old items, I saw a similar backview photo, locked in Evelyn's safe bottom. Get Adrian out to see me. I slapped the photo on the table. Otherwise, I'll publicize the equity transfer immediately. The lawyer's Adam's apple bobbed. He's still in rescue. After you left yesterday, he bit through the 4-tube. I laughed. This self-harm threat he played 3 years ago. Tell the nurse not to use the best meds on him. Let him hurt, then he'll have energy for the deal. After the lawyer left, I flipped through Michael's info. Wife died early, daughter has leukemia. On the accident day, he was rushing to the hospital with life-saving money. Clara killed a father trading his life for his daughter's survival. Phone rang, the black market boss. Miss Maya, your parents were caught at the Jiang old residence. They pried open the cellar, full of Jiang hidden firearms. I gripped the phone to the window. Indeed, greed ultimately touches what shouldn't be. Let the police accidentally leak that the firearms were hidden by Harold. My parents are best at taking the fall. The boss chuckled low. Understood. Hung up, I went to the hospital. Adrian lay in ICU, body full of tubes, only eyes movable. Seeing me, his pupils contracted sharply. The ledger. In Michael's daughter's hands. Address. I'll tell you. Let me. Tell me first, I leaned close to his face. Who died in the murder 20 years ago? His breathing suddenly quickened, monitor beeping shrilly. It was the Jiang family's illegitimate child. Illegitimate child? I recalled the photo in Evelyn's safe, back with a blurred date exactly 20 years ago. Good. I straightened, pulling off his oxygen tube. Address. His face turned purple instantly, fingers futilely clutching the sheet. West City. Orphanage. Name. Anna. I plugged the oxygen back, watching him cough like a dying fish. When I get the ledger, I wiped my fingers with a wet wipe. I'll consider giving you a quick end. The West City orphanage was deep in the old district. Anna sat by the window, clutching an old cloth doll, eyes identical to Michael's in the photo. Are you Sister Maya? Her voice was light, as if afraid to disturb something. Uncle Adrian said you can save my dad. I squatted before her, looking at the needle marks on her arm. I can save you. But need what your dad left. She felt out an iron box from under the pillow, rusty lock with a small key. This is what Dad left me, said it can exchange for lots of money to treat me. The moment the box opened, I was stunned. Inside besides the ledger was a yellowed paternity test. Michael was actually Adrian's biological father. So Clara killed her nominal uncle. What Adrian desperately hid was his shameful origin. Sister, Anna tugged my hem. Can Dad come back to life? I closed the box, hugging her. Yes. We'll make those who harmed him pay with their lives. Back at the hospital, Adrian was awake. He stared at the iron box in my hand, eyes flashing madness. Give it to me. Give me the box. I'll give you money. All the Jiang family's money. I threw the ledger at him, watching him flip pages tremblingly. 20 years ago, you pushed him down yourself, right? That illegitimate child. His movements froze sharply, face whiter than the ICU sheet. How did you? Evelyn's safe. I sat by the bed peeling an apple. Easier to open than you think. She probably didn't expect her beloved grandson was the enemy's seed. He suddenly pulled out all tubes, lunging to snatch the box. I dodged sideways, apple knife at his throat. You can't say it out. His face pressed against the cold blade. If said, everyone dies. I never planned to live anyway. I pushed the knife half an inch deeper. But before that, I'll drag your whole family down with me. His blood dripped on the sheet, just like mine from my wrist 3 years ago. Anna. She's your niece. You really want to watch her die of illness? I laughed, slapping the equity transfer on his face. The Jiang group is mine now. Her medical fees, I'll pay with Jiang money. Use your sins to exchange for her life. His gaze completely dispersed, body slumping on the bed. I lost. Utterly defeated. The monitor alarm sounded again, this time, no one cared. I walked out of ICU, sunlight stinging my eyes. Phone received 2 messages. One from police, Harold, Linda suspected of illegal arms possession, evidence solid, arrest approved. Another from hospital, Adrian rescue failed, death, signed organ donation before death, beneficiary Anna. I deleted the messages, threw the iron box into the river. Ledger burned, secrets rotted, all debts repaid. 3 months later, I went to the orphanage. Anna's leukemia was improving, she was doodling on paper. Sister Maya, she held up the paper. Look, this is an angel. The figure had wings but my face, holding a blood-dripping knife. I touched her head, gazing at the sunlight outside. Returning from hell, where are the angels? It's just dragging devils down one by one, standing on their corpses, pretending to see the light.